Hello everyone and welcome to another video from the Tiny Menagerie. There are a lot of small fish to choose from when stocking a fish tank, but if you're looking for a really tiny species, then you can't go far wrong with the Phoenix rasbora. These fish are minuscule. In fact, they're one of the smallest species commonly kept in the hobby. And being so diminutive, it does mean there are a few considerations to bear in mind if you're looking to add them to your collection. But what are phoenixes like to keep? What kind of setup do they need? Well, Phoenix rasbora hail from southern Borneo, where they tend to be found in shallow, slow-moving streams and rivers, often around marshes and swampland. And one of the great challenges when buying Phoenix rasbora is that they are members of a small, rather select group of micro rasboras that all look very similar and tend to be missold quite badly as each other. And in all honesty, actually, they all tend to be sold under the name of chili rasbora, which is one of the group and is the one that is the most well known. This in itself, though, is already a mistake, because micro rasboras were actually reclassified as rasboras instead, but the rasbora name has remained popular, probably because it's so much easier to pronounce than rasboras and is still widely used, especially as a common name and in shops. Either way though, phoenixes in particular look very similar to chili rasbora, though the two can be distinguished by phoenix tending to have either just a singular large black lateral blotch on their sides, or they'll have the lateral blotch with a broken line that runs down towards the tail. Chili rasboras, on the other hand, this line tends to be solid without any breaks in it. Phoenixes also aren't as strongly coloured as chilies, and the red in their side is concentrated around those lateral blotches rather than encompassing the entirety of their sides, and the areas that aren't red are a much more muted coloration as well. Chili rasboras, on the other hand, at least the males, tend to have much more widespread red coloration. But in all honesty, there's so much crossover in terms of appearance between the two species. For example, phoenixes can actually have an unbroken line depending on their age and where they were found, that it's pretty debatable whether these two are separate species or not. What this ultimately means for you though, the poor humble fish keeper who is trying to buy them, is that more often than not you will only see chili rasboras for sale, and that when you buy them you'll get a weird mix of different species. This can make selectively buying Phoenix rasboras quite challenging. Once you do manage to actually find some definitely phoenixes though, they are actually relatively easy to keep. Being on the extremely small side, adults max out at only around 17mm in length, and being a shoaling species, you will want to keep them in a minimum group size with at least 6 individuals. But in all honesty, having at least 10 will definitely give you a better display, again just because they are so very small. They're also rather active, and they will happily school together and with the other similar species too, and they'll cover a wide area of the tank given the opportunity. And so, despite being so small, they're not actually particularly suitable for really small tanks. You're going to want to provide them with an area with at least 50 centimeters, just so that they have space to swim. It's also worth bearing in mind that phoenixes are not the bravest of fish, and they will frequently retreat into heavily vegetated areas or dark shadowy spots in the tank and not be seen for hours, sometimes even days at a time, unless you go hunting for them. And they're also very easily spooked by loud bangs, noises, people rushing about. Anything on the outside of the tank that they don't particularly like will drive them into hiding as well. And so it's best not to site their tank too near very busy areas of the house. Having said that much though, being hidden so much does mean that it's extra special when you see them all out and about on display. And it's not only activity on the outside of their tank that spooks them. Inside the tank, any larger, more boisterous fish, particularly those that move fast and shoal closely, such as barbs or danios, will scare them away, or any fish that feed very aggressively, like many of the larger tetras that will suddenly start darting about. It's all going to scare the little rasboras off, and so you'll want to provide them with plenty of hiding places, preferably in the form of dense vegetation. And then, given plenty of places where they could potentially hide, just in case something nasty comes along, actually gives them the confidence to be out in the open. They also benefit hugely from having other small ditherfish in the tank with them. Other little brave species like celestial pearl danios, ember tetrads, neon tetras, those sorts of fish. The ones who tend to be always out and about in the open, always as a visible sign that there's no danger around at the moment, without themselves being too fast or overbearing so that they just scare the little phoenixes away. And so, as I'm sure you can tell by this point, choosing tank mates for phoenix can be a little bit on the challenging side, and that's why many keepers resort to keeping them in a species-only setup, just with a large enough shoal in there so that the phoenixes don't feel like they need to hide all of the time. Once you've got that tank established for them though, Phoenix Rasbora are surprisingly tolerant of a wide range of different water parameters. They're comfortable in a temperature anywhere between 22 and 28 degrees C, and in neutral to slightly acidic water anywhere between sort of 6 and 7.5. They don't seem to mind a fast flow too much neither, so long as it's not blowing them about all over the place. They will take shelter when they need to, and they'll be out in the current, happily eating passing morsels when they're not. And when it actually comes down to feeding, Phoenix Rasboras are surprisingly easy. They will eat pretty much anything that drifts by them. But they're also avid little hunters, and they will go looking for food in and around all of the crevices and nooks and crannies and little plants, anything like that, anywhere where a tiny bit of food might be hiding. Just bear in mind, of course, though, that all food that you give them needs to be very, very small. Borderline a powder, in fact. And as a staple, I give mine very finely crushed flakes, with bug bites as well, and the occasional microworms as a treat. Rather interestingly, I've also found phoenixes are one of the very few species that I've come across who will happily and greedily devour detritus worms whenever they get disturbed out of the sand, which of course adds a little bit of free food into their diet. They'll also take any tiny live or frozen food, then it can take them a while, though I found, to change foods. And when they're given something new, they'll go through quite an extended period of spitting it back out again every time they eat it until they slowly get used to it. Also, while they are micro-predators, Phoenix Rasbora are way too small to be any threat whatsoever towards Neocaridina shrimp, although I suspect they would attack the very smallest of shrimplets, the teensy ones who've only just hatched or are in the process of molting. I have a feeling they would be on the Phoenix's menu. But so long as you provide them with cover, then enough shrimplets should be able to survive to adulthood and be able to sustain a colony. In fact, despite looking incredibly delicate, Phoenix Rasboras are actually remarkably tolerant and easy to keep once you've got them established. By far the biggest challenge is buying them in the first place. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little video all about the Phoenix Rasbora. Happy fish keeping everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!